Good afternoon. My name is Maria Parani. I'm Associate Professor of Byzantine Art and Archaeology at the University of Cyprus, and I will be chairing the session for the presentation of the book by Maria Alessia Rossi. I will ask you to keep your microphones muted and remind you that we shall not be accepting live questions. So any questions you might have, please put them in the Q&A box. So as I said, we are going to hear about the book, the monograph by Maria Alessia Rossi, Visualizing Christ Miracles in Late Byzantium, Art, Theology, and Court Culture, printed by Cambridge University Press. This is a richly and beautifully illustrated monograph, and it constitutes a thorough study of the cycle of Christ miracles in Byzantine monumental painting of the late 13th and the early 14th century, that is, during the reign of Andronikos II Palaiologos. Challenging current views of this cycle as secondary within the overall iconographic program of Byzantine churches, the author invites us to consider it as a manifestation of a wider interest in the miraculous at the time, especially under the light of the Orthodox reaction to the unionist policies of Michael VIII Palaiologos. Against this broader sociopolitical and religious background, the author presents an insightful, detailed analysis of 8 cycles located in churches in Constantinople, Mistras, Thessaloniki, Mount Athos, Ohrid, and Kastoria. Through a careful consideration of the iconography of individual scenes, the criteria of their selection and grouping, their articulation within the space of the church, and their integration within the wider iconographic program, the author teases out the theological, didactic, and liturgical ramifications of the cycle of Christ's miracles. She also highlights the inventiveness in the treatment of these episodes by the painters, especially the ways in which they went beyond the mere illustration or visual exegesis of the gospel accounts to create compositions that were relevant to the preoccupations and experiences of their intended viewers, offering the faithful reassurance of the reality of Christ's miraculous grace and guidance to the path of salvation through faith and repentance. So now I would like to ask our author to say a few words about her book. Alessia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. Please let me know if you can see the full view.
Yes, it is fine.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So let me start by thanking Professor Parani for the kind introduction and for agreeing to be the chair for my session. I am deeply honored. And also to Petros and Lucas and Callum for putting together this exciting event and for giving us and me the opportunity to talk and promote our books. Visualizing Christ's miracles in late Byzantium introduces the episodes of Christ's miracles in Byzantium for the first time to a broader audience and offers an exhaustive overview of their artistic development. The painted cycles of Christ's miracles have for a long time been acknowledged solely as part of the secondary cycles accompanying the Dodecaorton that started appearing in the 13th century in Byzantine monumental decorations. Yet when exploring this iconography and these cycles in depth, we are faced with a degree of inventiveness and freedom that we're not used to, and it challenges the ways we are used to thinking of the Byzantine artistic tradition. My main case studies, as Professor Parani mentioned, are 8 churches in Constantinople, Mistras, Thessaloniki, Mount Athos, Ohrid, and Kastoria, and you can see them listed on this slide. The chronological limits are determined by the phenomenon itself. All these monuments date between 1282 and 1328. They are all tied to the Byzantine cultural sphere, and they can all be found within the boundaries of the early Palaiologan Byzantine Empire. As evident when comparing the miracle cycles before 1282, in the span of 40 years, you have 8 churches, while before you have 19 in 7 centuries. And the amount of the early Palaiologan churches doubles if you consider the Serbian kingdom. And I should mention here that the Serbian kingdom was indeed part of the doctoral dissertation that this book stems from. However, I believe that the Serbian material needs to be treated independently before a comparative study is feasible, and thus decided not to include them in this book. In an effort to be as comprehensive as possible, at the end of the book there are several tables that enumerate, and I might add painstakingly, all the instances of which I'm aware of Christ's miracle cycles before and after the early Palaiologan period. So the Serbian material can be found here, as you can see from table B. Going back to the artistic evidence, Christ performed more than 60 miracles during his lifetime. Of these, only 32 ever appear in early Palaiologan monumental decorations, and 11 are unica. The diversity of the scene, selections, iconography, and layout suggests that Christ's miracles never achieved a canonical treatment. Nevertheless, I argue that some elements recur more than others. For instance, the triad of the episodes of Christ and the Samaritan woman, the healing of the paralytic, and the healing of the man born blind appears virtually in all churches and is associated with the ceremony of baptism, suggesting that this grouping was widely acknowledged and easily recognizable. While in other instances, as seen in the healing of the multitude in Cora, artistic commissions and written opera relating to the miraculous were at times combined, introducing the visualization of new diseases, like the tumor growing on the first man seated on the right, that you can see here, that does not appear at all in the biblical narrative, but is visualized in Cora. I made sure to discuss the iconography and grouping of these images in 2 separate chapters, chapters 3 and 4, that were thematically based so that the material could be compared and contrasted. However, I also wanted the monuments and the specific cycles to stand alone. And this is what you can see in chapter 5. You can actually see it thanks to the fabulous drawings illustrated by Matilde Grimaldi that for the first time present Christ's miracles in space. So for each monument, you will have the drawing, you will have the plan, and then you will have the color illustrations. This chapter, and you can see one more example here from the Peribleptos. This chapter tackles the issues of patronage, artist, and audience. Whether through blood, military campaigns, or ecclesiastical office, the promoters of these cycles were part of the same cultural milieu surrounding Andronicus II, suggesting my new assertion that the miracle cycle was indeed a product of Byzantine court culture. And with this in mind, the book makes a clear case for our understanding and calling of these cycles as miracle cycles and not ministry cycles. In fact, miracle cycles do not comprise exclusively scenes of healings and resurrections. And I'm showing you a few examples here. Yet the added episodes serve to confirm, establish, and stress Christ's powers. This book argues that the miracle cycles successfully set out to communicate, by means of wondrous acts, a notion of eternal present by creating a bridge between the biblical time to the present time of the viewer. The widespread use of this imagery should not be seen as an isolated phenomenon, but a part of a larger surge in commissions in different media that engage with miracles, and this is the core of chapter 2. The present research overcomes the fragmentation of visual and textual evidence, introducing an interdisciplinary and comparative approach. It argues that the reason for this promotion of miracles, ranging from miraculan homilies to the artistic development of this iconography, can be found in the establishment of a procedure for the official sanctioning of legitimacy of new saints by the Patriarchate of Constantinople at the end of the 13th century. And spoiler alert, as you can imagine at this point, this procedure, this canonization procedure, was based specifically on miracles. Finally, as you can see from the table of contents, we are working our way backwards to chapter 1. Here, I situate the critical stage for the exponential increase of this iconography by providing the contemporary socio-political, historical, and religious context. I focus specifically on the results of the shifts from the unionist policy of Andronicus' second father, Michael VIII, to the empowerment of the Orthodox Church pursued by Andronicus himself. Miracles play an intriguing role in the theological debates and justifications for their instatement of orthodoxy under Andronicus. So working on miracles led me to offer a re-evaluation of the narrative of decay centered on the late Byzantine period, and specifically on Andronicus II. Overall, far from a formulaic ensemble they are often mistaken to be, this book demonstrates that Christ's miracles were carefully and inventively crafted by the cultural milieu, secular and religious, surrounding Emperor Andronicus II at a time of ferment in the early Paleologian era. Thank you so much for the attention.
Thank you, Alessia, for this very lucid overview of your book, and congratulations on its publication. I don't see any questions yet in the box, so maybe I could begin the discussion. It was very interesting. I like the idea of the expanded miracle cycle rather than a ministry cycle, bringing to the fore, as you said, the nature of Christ's powers and its impact on for the faithful. And I also liked how I think it's very interesting when you discuss the different criteria behind the choice, where you draw attention to liturgical and theological, but also, current the association with the Zoologos Pigi and all that. The especially interesting is also the association you make between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and I have the impression that this is a wider phenomenon, a rise in interest in the Old Testament and how it becomes the New Testament comes to complete, and I was wondering whether I was wondering if you could talk a bit more about this dynamic between the Old Testament and the New Testament, as you see it in realized in the miracles. Because this is an aspect that hasn't been noticed before at all, and I think this is quite fascinating that you highlighted.
Thank you so much. I completely agree. I think it was quite surprising to myself in the first place when I started working on this. There are several episodes, especially what you could consider non-miraculous, that make reference, so Christ's teaching in the temple, that make reference to Old Testament prophecies and highlight this idea of the fulfillment of the prophecy through Christ. So this is what this is the background to our discussion, and I think when you look, a clear example is the Paraclesion of Euthymius in Thessaloniki in the Basilica of St. Demetrius. There's really the way they are presented. There is on the one hand, the Christ represented while teaching, so explaining the prophecy and embodying physically the fulfillment of the prophecy. And then on the other hand of the names, you have him healing exactly, as the prophecy said, the lame and the blind and the paralytics, you can see that they're really, bouncing off each other in some ways. And then again, in the same space, just in the nave, but when you are in the space, they really talk to each other. And that's why the drawings really showcase that. And then you have Euthemius actually performing, miracles in his lifetime. So, and underneath you have the miracles of Demetrius that are still continuing. You really see how the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the 14th century are just a continuation. And it does speak to the fact that miracles were not meant to be, something just in the biblical past or in, the early Christianity. It was something that, was meant to be lived.
Yeah, it was very. I think that comes out very strongly in your book. You argue it very clearly and convincingly, the relevance not just to the political and the theological concerns, but to the real concerns of the faithful who saw this grace, the miraculous grace, and felt it around them. So since I think, I hope, and I really hope that you are able to apply this rigorous methodology and analysis to expand and to see how what you have identified as a court-related phenomenon might have impacted and radiated not just to Serbia, as you said, where you work, but beyond the world of the court, how we see it, if we see it, infiltrating, Byzantine monumental art beyond this tightly knit group. That would be the exciting, and I hope you will have the chance to work on it in the future. So if you would like to make a final comment or something, if not,
I see a question.
There is a question.
Yes.
There is a question by Linda Safran. There are wonderful realia in the miracle episodes. Did you discover any new ones by looking at all of them comprehensively?
Can I ask for a clarification? What did you discover any new ones in?
Let's see. Linda, what do you mean by new ones? Are you referring to artifacts or practice?
Exactly. Okay.
Okay.
So all aspects
like tools,
of it.
medical conditions. Yes.
Yes. So thank you so much, Professor Safran, for the question. Yes. So yes. Absolutely. I think this is especially something that I'm continuing to work on. I was initially, you get a sense that there is a lot of repetition, that there is not a lot of realia in sense of like the reality. But when you start looking more carefully, there is the example of Cora, for instance, where you do have an actual disease that does not appear in the biblical text. Because the biblical text sometimes is so generic. So, that is the case of the multitude. So you just, there are a lot of textual sources for that. There's a lot of narratives that talk about healing of many people. But then when you realize that the artist had to fill out what the many people looked like. And so there does seem to have, we do have like a few glimpses of, reality trickling in. And so you definitely have the example of Cora that, fascinatingly enough, for some of us, does reappear in Decani, so in the Serbian kingdom, exactly the same. So But there's
Okay.
also,
I'm sorry,
Butler.
we have to, but yes, there is this material. So I have to thank here Alessia, both for the presentation, the discussion, and wish her all the best. And now I give the floor to our next presentation of Catherine Keen's book titled More Than a Church, Late Antique Ecclesiastical Complexes in Cyprus. So good afternoon from me.